Hi, and welcome to this live reading from A Fair Trade by Laylah Abrams, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. Jack stayed toward the edges of the wide street to keep from being carried away in the surge. A man carrying a canvas bag over his shoulder hurried through the crowd. A cart filled with market goods jostled past. The clang and clamor of civilization hurt his ears. His eyes darted from blank face to blank face. People in the city were all like beavers scurrying about, making their dens, or maybe more like the animals he had seen in the market in cages and pens. He turned and walked down a narrow alley. His boots sank in the spring mud, raising to his nostrils the stink of too many bodies living on top of each other. He had been in St. Louis ever since winter began, the longest he had ever stayed, and the city seemed thicker and louder than ever before. He ambled past a general store with a sign that read, "All provisions necessary for emigrating west." It was almost too late to leave now if they meant to reach their destination before winter. But still, men and women were making purchases for their journey to California in search of gold, or to Oregon, where land was given away to whomever could settle it. They gave him fearful glances, and he glared back. At the end of the alley, an old trapper like Pa, or himself in a few more decades, squatted on the ground outside the tavern. He wore an impressive string of bear claws around his neck, but the fur on his beaverskin cap was wearing through, and the seams were falling apart on his buckskins. He looked thin and worn himself. Jack's hand strayed to his pouch and then stopped. He only had a few dollars, and several hunks of gold he still needed to exchange. Every man for himself, and the devil take the hindmost. He had heard the proverb often enough. Any man with experience should be able to get along on his own. Jack certainly had. He walked past the man and entered the tavern, scanning the dim room for his uncle. Grandpa had passed on long ago. Uncle Merriweather had been killed in a misunderstanding over a borrowed horse, or so they said, and Pa had succumbed a few years back. Uncle William was the only person he had left in the world. He had tried all his uncle's common haunts with no luck, but this was the kind of hole he might be drawn to. "Jack, is that you?" called a burly man from a table in the corner. He had traded his deerskins for cotton and wool, but with his weather-beaten face he still held the hardened air of a frontiersman. As Jack approached, Uncle William added, "By Christ, Jackie, haven't seen you in years. Got any money on you by chance?" "Same as always." "Enough for a few drinks," Jack answered. "Excellent." His uncle smiled, gapped yellow teeth appearing below his bushy mustache. "Have a seat and tell me how you been. You're looking more grizzled than I am." Jack ran a hand over his long dark beard. He could certainly afford a haircut now, yet he hadn't bothered. He took the seat his uncle offered him. "I was out in Oregon for a while and then in California. Headed here before the snow started." "California, eh?" William's eyes brightened. "Did you try a bit of mining?" "No, it ain't worth the trouble. You hear stories of gold, but that's all they are." His uncle didn't need to know about his find, not that he had plans for it yet. "Oh," William answered with a shrug. "But Oregon, last time I was at Fort Vancouver, you were still a little fella, and your grandpa was doing his best to keep you from turning out like his sons." He laughed. Then the smile faded. "I was sorry not to see your pa at the end. He was as much a brother to me as Mary was." Jack nodded and raised his glass. "To Pa and Grandpa," he said. His uncle raised his own. "So you're finally thinking of settling down?" "Thinking, anyway," he answered. "Not sure how. Maybe I'll have a house outside the city." William nodded. "It's what your pa would have said. Set up a lodge and buy a wife." Jack grimaced. "I don't need someone I have to take care of." "Damn right, no man needs that kind of hassle. Your pa—" William stopped mid-sentence as his eyes roved behind Jack. He turned. Two men a few tables over, one wearing a bowler hat and the other with impressive sideburns like squirrel tails, were playing a game of cards. William stood up and motioned Jack over with him. "Mind if we join you?" he asked the men. "Heck, not at all," Bowler Hat answered. "Don't get to play cards with wild men every day." Both of them laughed. Jack's eyes narrowed. They had probably never slept anywhere but in stodgy apartments, never awakened on a mountaintop to the scent of wildflowers and the sound of an eagle's cry, never peeled back a frozen horse blanket to a dawn as bright and hard as a steel blade. Yet they presumed to measure them. William ignored the insult and sat down. Gambling was among his many weaknesses. Jack played cautiously, winning a few more hands than he lost, but hand after hand, his uncle had nothing, or a pair at most. Oh, lost again, the old gambler said, throwing down his cards. You'll give me a chance to get my money back, won't you? He asked their new acquaintances. Just one more try? Sideburns sneered. Oh, sure, why not? Wonderful, exclaimed William. Everything in? He'd slowly been increasing the stakes, and there was a lot of money on the table. Fine, agreed Bowler Hat, rolling his eyes. Jack sat out, pocketing his money. He had witnessed his uncle in action many times before. When William finally laid down his cards, an ace, king, queen, jack, and 10, all spades, Jack seemed to be the only one to see a couple of them come from up his sleeve. Still, the two men eyed them with wrinkled brows. I think we've been taken in, said Sideburns, as William reached for his winnings. Bowler Hat was a little bigger, but not as round as Sideburns. He'd be the faster one. Jack's right hand instinctively moved to his knife. With his other hand, he raised his glass as if to take a sip. I'm not going to stand for these cheating sons of bitches, Bowler Hat answered. He pushed his chair from the table and rose to take a swing, but before his fist even left his side, Jack smashed his glass on the man's head. Bowler Hat had not even crumpled to the table before the point of Jack's knife was 2 inches from Sideburns' right eye. Turning pale, the man raised his hands and took a step back. We're in a city, for God's sake, chided Blaine. Put that away before they have you arrested. As Sideburns was now walking stiffly to the door, leaving his friend bleeding on the table, Jack complied. The tavern owner suddenly appeared beside them with his largest bartender and a hickory cudgel. Jack landed in the sodden street with a squishy splash. His uncle followed soon after. Just like old times. As William turned to yell curses back at the owner and patrons, Jack caught sight of a petite, dark-haired woman standing with an armful of packages in front of the store on the other side of the street. She was young, no more than 20, and wore a flowing white dress and a hat decked with cascading ribbons. With a sweet heart-shaped face and large eyes, she was like a piece of delicate lace not meant for his rough hands. She glanced about her as though waiting for someone and not finding him. She put all but one box down on the stoop. Her face lit up in anticipation as she carefully opened her prize. Jack couldn't see what it was, but it didn't matter. There was no way he could draw his eyes from the absolute delight on her face. Suddenly, she looked to her right and frowned. A man in a dirty, rumpled coat had advanced on a girl, possibly a beggar or a prostitute, and she was trying to pull away from his hand on her arm. I suggest you let go of her, the dark-haired woman's voice rang out in a firm, spirited tone, as proud as a kestrel. The man laughed and made a bawdy comment involving both women. Well, the woman in white exclaimed. More loudly, she yelled, Mr. Parsons, help! I'm being robbed! A large man with a shotgun soon appeared in the doorway of the shop, and a chuckle bubbled to Jack's throat. She wasn't as innocent as she looked. I'm not trying to rob her. Seeing her packages on the stoop between the grubby-looking man and his customer, Mr. Parsons aimed his gun at the man's knees. No, the likes of you would just be helping this fine lady with her boxes. Now get out of here. The man stopped arguing and made his retreat. And you too, Mr. Parsons said to the girl nearby. Then he turned to the dark-haired woman. I'm very sorry about that, ma'am. Having to put up with riffraff comes from being a frontier town. No, it's all right, thank you, she said, looking beyond him at the girl, who was walking away. She suddenly hurried toward her and handed her the box she held in her hands, the one she had opened with excitement. Here, take this, she told him. Jack felt an odd hitch in his chest as the woman gave her prize away. He was still watching her when he was startled by William's voice at his side. Yep, that's about the look Dan Briggs had on his face the first time he saw my sister, he said, grinning. Your pa fell for her at first sight. When Jack turned back, the dark-haired woman was disappearing down the street. A gangly man in a fine suit was at her side, carrying her remaining purchases.